This is the Modern Day Outlaw Aiden Perrin, and you're checking out 3 Count Podcast. Can't wait.
Do you wanna get live with me? Do you really wanna ride with me? I'm in the club, baby, grind on me. Do you wanna get live with me? Do you wanna get live with me? Do you really wanna
Welcome
ride
everybody
with
to
me?
another great edition of the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And by season 4 and our 300th and 30-something episode and a new background, right? I would just hope you say it with me. I am your Sherpa because like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like most good Sherpas, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. And that's why it's never about me. It's about who's in the ring. So who's in the ring today? You can find this man at Rugged Pro. You can find this man at Pride Championship, New Wrestling. You can find this man at New Wrestling Revolution, World's Finest, and you can find this man at Best of the Midwest in November. He is a 6'3", 320 of Twisted Steel and Hell on Wheels. He is Aiden Perrin.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the awesome intro. What's up?
Hell yeah, bro. What's going on, man? So it's funny because we were jumping on before we started talking, and you had mentioned something outside. You were like, hey, I'm just a quote unquote, I'm an Iowa hick. And I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm actually from Nebraska. Like, even though I live in Massachusetts currently, I'm a Nebraska boy myself.
You know what the Midwest is? We're a different breed.
Oh yeah, 100%. I tell people all the time, I was like, I don't think people realize like how different the Midwest is, right? Because I know a lot of people talk about the Midwest being like Ohio and Indiana and Illinois.
I know,
bruh, that is like mid. And I tell them all the time, that's mid east. Like anything west of the Mississippi and
is the
east of the Rockies, that's a true Midwest. Like
yes.
That's the true spot.
I was actually just cutting a promo about the Best of the Midwest tournament being in Indiana, and I just said the line, you guys aren't even really the Midwest. Like, why is Ohio here? Just because the Paul brothers couldn't show up didn't mean you had to bring Ohio. And I was burying the other states past that line. I didn't even think to bury Nebraska or the actual Midwest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, let's be real, okay? Any state that looks like a tractor, not Midwest. Okay. You can be country, right, but you ain't Midwest. All right. You're your own place. It's Ohio. Nobody likes Ohio, right? We don't talk about Cleveland, right? Who cares?
Ohio even a real thing?
The Rock Hall of Fame, whatever. You still got the Browns and the Bengals in that place. Let me know when you guys win.
As a Chiefs fan, I would like to agree with that fully.
I'm a Broncos fan at heart, so I can't.
I'm so sorry.
Hey,
we all have something wrong with us.
AFC West, we both win titles. All right, let's just put it that way.
That's the truth. We're not the Raiders.
We're not the Raiders. No, that team in black and silver can go to hell. I don't care about those guys. Even though the time that we're recording,
I think they already are in hell. They have Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback.
Well, I mean, let's be fair, right? We lost to them for week 1. So if you guys want to understand when we're recording this week 2 Monday Night Football, so you can figure out the game yourself, because we're not going to talk about the Monday night game here.
Right.
But no, okay, so let's wrap it, right? So we were talking about right before we got on, right? One, that we both were admiring some wrestlers from afar, right? And so today they announced some of the names that were being announced at the WWE tryout, right? One of those names is Richard Holiday, and we can talk about him because one, we both kind of have a connection with him, right? I know Rich, right? I've talked to him a couple times. We've had great conversations at Beyond Wrestling up in the Northeast, and then you were mentioning about how you admire the Dynasty, right, from a distance.
Yeah, no, as a fan, and I always tell people I'm the biggest mark because I'm the guy who actually got in the business, so I'm a fan at heart, deep down. And so as a fan, I loved Richard Holiday and the Dynasty on MLW. That reminded me so much of a modern day evolution of Four Horsemen. Really the original core of the Four Horsemen was Tully and Flair. People they realized that Arn became such a star later, but he wasn't the initial focus of the Four Horsemen, even though he was the one who named it. It was the coalition of Tully Blanchard and Ric Flair, and that's kind of what MJF and Richard Holiday kind of felt like to me. And then you had the Arn Anderson equivalent and Alexander Hammerstone, who's also amazing. And I just enjoyed that faction so much. And then, Holiday's stuff as a single star is great too. Deeply entertaining. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, we're back now. But you were continuing on about Holiday and about how you're a fan with like the faction and stuff.
Yeah, and I've just been a fan of all of his work that I've ever seen, and the dude really has so much like drive. It's very admirable, seeing as he had the cancer, I believe it was, and
Yeah.
then to make the total body transformation he did to like this ripped, super tone tan dude who looks like a star in the 80s. He looks like the Macho Man to me now physically. And he's another guy kind of like Matt Cardona that took all that effort. It kind of inspires me to get in the gym more even. And so I have huge respect for all that, ambition.
It's funny though because like when I talked to Richard, I remember the first thing I said to him too. I like walked up to him. I said, "Hey," I was like, "My name's Cliff," and he was like, "I'm Rich." I was like, "The first thing I just want to tell you is congratulations." But like I just feel like that was the biggest thing. Like first of all, like you just beat cancer. Let's be real. Now we're gonna let's talk about this. And then the next thing I said, I have so many questions for you. And then we started talking from there. So it was like just
Right.
I was like, I'm a doctor's guy. Mind you, like it's one of those things where like in this business, right? Like we admire like a lot of the talent from like afar, and then we talk to them. Like you had mentioned, you said the word right, and I'm gonna fix something that you said, right? You said I'm a mark for the business, right? You're a mark, and it's something that Martin Stone, like on our, if you guys want to go check out our episode with Martin Stone, he even corrected me because I had talked about me being a mark for a certain wrestler. He's like, no, you're not a mark for that person. You're a student of that person. So I was like,
wow.
oh. Whole mindset change. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna be a student of that person. So you have to kind of like think of it in that sense that you got into the business because you're a fan of it, but more importantly, now you're a student of the game. So now this is who you like to follow. So
I
it's the
love
same
that.
kind of concept.
Never thought of that. I am a huge student of the game. I watch a ton of tape and stuff. So I guess I'm kind of at a loss for words because I had never thought of that way. But that's right. I didn't mean that I was a mark. I meant that workers that get in are literally the biggest fans before they are in the actual sport. But yeah, you're right there.
But see, like it's funny because like you hear those things, right? And then you think about it because like even when I talked to Gilbert, right, the one time that me and Gilbert we had a lot of conversations, but Gilbert he said it too. He was like, "Hey, you know what? You're a mark, man." He's like, "You get into business because you love the business." He's like, "Now if you're a smart mark, you sit in the stands because you understand how punishing your body goes through with all these bumps and stuff."
Right. All you got to do is write a dirt sheet. You'll have carpal tunnel.
That's the worst bump you got to take is whenever you drop a pencil. Like,
Right. Or if the chair leg breaks, you might take a minor bump.
Your phone's gonna take more bumps as you're like texting it than you will. Like I love like hearing other people talk about the business and stuff like that. It really gets me hyped because it's like I've only been doing this for like just under 4 years, right?
Wow.
But we've been doing this podcast for so long that I forget that like we have like not that we're gonna mark out right on this podcast about it, but we've done like over 300 and like I think this is like 339, 340 like now. But we've had like so many people come on and just have fun conversations, and it's just it's so cool to be able to talk to people about wrestling and just have like a passion light up and watch them light up. Because like you said it right, and this was something that threw me off. You're 19. Like,
Yeah.
yo. And so to me, like I'm almost 40, bro. And it's like, oh shit. Like, so I gotta hear like one, who is Aiden Perrin? But then two, I want to know like how did you get into the business? What brought you in? Like what drove you to get in?
Aiden Perrin is the result of all the psychology wards being shut down in the 80s. Because I would have been housed there. But in all seriousness, I was just such a massive fan, and I just never saw a route for myself besides professional wrestling. It was the thing that I felt the most love for in my entire life when I found it at age 4. And so that was always the plan. And so I reached out to Dr. Tom Pritchard's school, JPWA in Knoxville. To be completely honest, I'm a huge Jim Cornette fan of his podcast. And Dr. Tom was on there. And when Doc was on the podcast, I got introduced to him. And I was like, wow, that guy's really smart about the business. And then I watched the FCW documentary on the network. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Bro, that was incredible, wasn't it? I love that documentary to see all of those stars talk about Doc and how it worked. And Dusty Rhodes, who is my literal hero, the person that I'm the biggest fan of in the entire world is Dusty Rhodes. And I was just like, that's my only option. No other school will work for me. And I sent up a hope and a prayer, and they accepted me the day after my 18th birthday.
Hey yo, that's lit though, and you know to get trained by such a beautiful mind like Doc Bridge, right?
Oh my
It's
god.
it's crazy to think about, right? Because like especially because you know, like you said, you're an Iowa kid. You saw hope, you threw it out there, you got it, and then like here you are being trained by one of the best minds in the business. So it's like, yo, by all means, like props to you for just being hungry and wanting to chase after your dream. And like you said something incredible too, right? Like there's no option B, right? I think about the things, and I know he's not really a popular person to talk about Will Smith, right? But Will said this too, where he's like, uh, if you have a plan B, your plan A is gonna fail. So you can't have a
Yeah.
plan B. You gotta go like all in. So I think that's cool, and I commend you on just like going out there and just like chasing after something that you really want to do.
Well, and I appreciate that. That's awesome. I love that you really see that, but I didn't register to me when I did it. I was just like, this is what I'm doing. I was like, hey mom, I'm gonna move 1,000 miles to go wrestle professionally, because I see it on the TV and I like it. And she was just like, okay, son. And then she helped me pack up and drove me and my dad and my sister to Knoxville, Tennessee over a 3-day period. Um, we come from a town of 300 people, and that town is just shy of about 500,000
Mm.
and growing. And, I moved down there and I moved into actually the campaign manager of Kane's house, the social media coordinator guy for Kane's campaign. His house. He lived in the basement with his family. And then me and 4 other dudes crashed up top.
Nice.
Yes. And intermittently, other people would come in. We would like come home, and Jamal would be like, yep, this is Alan. He stays in the laundry room. Don't disturb him. Because old JPWA students would just be passing through, and that's how the school is. They're like, all right, we can fit more. We'll bunk them up, and they, for a weekend, guys would go wrestle in SPCW or for Joe Kazana Promotions or something, and it would save guys hotel fees. And so I got to see all these different former JPWA students come through, and then it was just such an interesting experience. I felt like I was almost in a frat house, and it was amazing. I got a college experience, but with actually really cool people, and we all had a love for wrestling. We would stay up till 3 a.m, even though I'd work at 7 and they had work at 9. We would stay up till 3 a.m. watching wrestling.
But that's the thing though, is that wrestling is like this big brotherhood, right? That you
Oh yeah.
meet all these people who are very passionate about the same things that you're passionate about, right? And it's weird to kind of think of it as like a fraternity or sorority, right? Depending on where, which side you choose, which side you are, right? But being this fraternity, this brotherhood with people who are just excited about the product like you are, and then whether it's a new type or an old type, right? You're into like the days of like the territories, or you're into like a new modern, right? You're like AEW, WWE,
Oh yeah.
or even like an Impact, right? Or you want to go back and watch TNA, but you find all these minds that are like, bro, have you seen this match from New Japan back in like 1994? I'm like,
Yep.
no, dude, I have not. What is this
Gonna
match we're
watch
talking
it.
about?
Well, I'm a weirdo. I love old, unique stuff. Like my favorite wrestling match of all time is probably either Terry Funk versus Harley Race in Houston, the 2 out of 3 falls match.
Mm-hmm.
That has one of the most amazing finish in the history of the business, I think, where Terry Funk bleeds out on Harley Race and passes out while he's doing the spinning toe hold, and the doctor stops it, even though he had Race beat in Texas. And so that's my view. I'm so old school, I'm still stuck in a headlock for 10 minutes, as they say.
Yeah, I love it.
And another guy, Vaughn, who's an incredibly talented guy, who was my roommate, he loves the Attitude Era because that's the era he came up on. and he loves the big characters and the over the topness and the funniness and the great technical wrestling like Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit, and and guys like Brock Lesnar and guys like um William Regal and Christian and all those. And so I got to, open my mind. I never thought that wrestling was bad. It just wasn't my flavor.
Right.
Doc says flavors of ice cream. That's wasn't my flavor. And we had another guy named Chris who was into like Japanese junior heavyweight style, but old like war promotion with Jericho versus Ultimo Dragon and all those incredible matches like that. So I got to get introduced to the roots of today's style that, and I hate to say it, a lot of guys don't do well. So I was never going to be a fan of, but when I saw it done really super well, it's like, oh, I am a fan of that. It just, when it's done by
Certain people.
legitimate, people.
Yeah. No, it's funny because like for me, right? Like I grew up in like the golden era and then and I was like a young teenager. Well, I don't want to say young teenager. I'm like 10, 11, 12 when the Attitude Era really kicked off. So I became like a massive fan of like the Attitude Era. But I find myself now like just enjoying wrestling. Like not even just like it's almost like if you were in like Baskin Robbins, right? You mentioned ice cream, right? Like just different flavors, right? And it almost like you're in Baskin Robbins and you're like eating all the ice cream, but you just can't find a flavor that you like. You just love all of them, except maybe for me, one of them, I don't know, maybe if there's one that's like flavored like coconut, I wouldn't like it because that's the most disgusting flavor of all time. But I think to myself, like I'm like, yo, I love watching New Japan. I love watching All Japan. I just love like all wrestling, like just in general. It doesn't matter if it's old school, new school. I just love like watching wrestling and like taking notes. I found myself like more when I was like a fan, when I was just like a kid, like kind of learning about the business and trying to figure stuff out. I was like, damn, dude, like I was as a kid, I was just into WWF or WCW, right? And then
Right.
I found later. But then like as I got older and I started really like studying the game, I'm like old school ROH, like, yo, let me get like versus Brian,
Samoa Joe. I
right?
love me some Joe. I
Yeah.
got a question though. I actually want to know this as a younger fan. What was the actual feeling when WCW was legitimately the top company in the world? Was it, oh, they're the top company and WWE's second now, or was it WWE's first? They're just in a lull. How was that feeling, and when did it really change back to WWE as the industry ass kicker and they own the whole show, Evil Empire?
You know what's so funny is that that's such an interesting question because it's the first time that someone's ever asked me that. But to me as a kid growing up, I really didn't notice a difference because like in mind you, in Baird, Nebraska, right where I graduated high school, when I was a kid in like 7th and 8th grade, everybody was either team Suck It or team Wolf, like NWO. Like that's
Right.
just what it was. Everybody walking around NWO or everybody telling each other to suck it, right? And then we had parents complaining that kids were doing
I
chop.
got 3 days worth of detention for doing Suck It as a kid because I got latter generation Degeneration X. So I do contend I was not doing the Suck It. I was doing the X. So I do contend that because
But
Church Boy Shawn Michaels can do it. I can do it.
right. But it
But
was interesting because, like, to me, I just flipped back and forth between both networks, and I never even thought about it. Like, I would want to see what's happening on like WWF and see like Austin come out and like kick the hell out of like Rock and all those guys, or I'd want to flip over and watch like I don't know, Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen like try to take on the NWO, right? And I remember
right.
like one time, I think for me, I started fading off of it when Rey Mysterio got masked. When he took off his mask, I got away from it because I was like, I love Rey Mysterio. He's my favorite wrestler of all time, and he was like the reason why I really wanted to start watching Nitro. So we see this small dude in pink just run around, just fly around the ring the way he did,
Like
and
Spider-Man.
yeah, and then like all of a sudden like he gets masked, and like I was kind of like, well, I don't like how this is because Juventud had just masked too, so I was like, I don't like the fact that Juventud Guerrero took his mask off, and now
Wasn't that
here's
like a company-wide initiative by Time Warner that
yeah.
said we need people with faces to promote our ads and commercials and such. So I always thought that was that true?
I mean, that's the rumor, and so like when I saw like Rey Mysterio take his mask off, I was like, yo, it was just. I mean, it's not gonna sound funny, but he was a kid, right? Like he was a kid, and he was
Right.
doing this, and it was pretty much. It felt like something. It was like an injustice that had just been done, and I
Well,
kind of drew away from it. And then Goldberg lost, and I was like, I don't really care for this now. And I just went back to watching WCW. My other problem with or WWE, my other problem with WCW was they were trying to start like a bunch of Mortal Kombat characters. Like I don't know if people remember
Mortis and
Wrath and
Canyon.
Mortis and Wrath.
Canyon is
Glacier.
Mortis, Wrath was Atom Bomb, and
Yeah.
Glacier was Glacier.
There was a time. There was a crazy part, right? There was a time where Wrath was like on this huge win streak, right? Not saying that he was like undefeated, right? But he was like 7-0, 8-0. Like he was just
Yeah.
7, 8 win streaks in a row. And then Kevin Nash came out and beat him. And I was like, why did we do this? And I remember like just being kind of turned away from it. And I was like, I want to watch the Nation of Domination do their thing anyway. So like I started watching.
Right. And you know, the reason why I asked that question was to relate back to a more modern day theory I have. I think a lot of the AEW and WWE fans of today don't realize you're supposed to like both. You're wrestling fans. You are supposed to like both. You may not like them all the time. You may think this company does this better or this company does that better. But if you are a diehard wrestling fan, you're not supposed to be, well, I'm team AEW or I'm team WWE. That's a lot of guys getting jobs that pay them a lot of money to take care of their family. They wouldn't be making that otherwise. And I think that a lot of people don't realize in the Twitterverse that, you know, you're supposed to love both of them. You're supposed to be cheering on everybody to succeed in that regard.
It's so weird too, because when you think about like on the indie scene, right? Like nobody in the indie scene goes, well, I like, we'll throw promotions out there. I like SPW. Well, I like WPW. Like it doesn't happen that way. It's like, yo, you like both wrestling. And even in the like early 2000s, right? When WWE closed down WCW and ECW, and then it became WWE versus Impact, right? Nobody said, yo, you're either Team Impact or Team WWE.
Right.
It was, yo, you just like watching both products. And so to me, I'm confused by why some people have so much hate. Why there's so much tribalism towards both.
I always say that WWE was my gateway drug to wrestling. You know, that opened the world up to me, but WWE was the gateway drug to wrestling. And so I got to see that. And then when I saw Impact for the first time, and I saw guys like AJ Styles, guys like Samoa Joe, I wasn't like, oh, I'm Team Impact. And I was like, I just really love this product. And then when I got introduced to ROH, which I watched with my grandpa every Saturday night at 11 o'clock on the local channel for Sinclair, we would watch ROH. And I fell in love with their guys. It wasn't ever, well, now I'm Team ROH. It's now Monday night, I'm going to go watch WWE.
Right. It's to
see what, when I saw AJ Styles come out for the first time on a Miz TV segment, I blew like out of my seat because I didn't watch the Rumble.
Oh, when I saw him in the Rumble for the first time, I was like, hey, okay, it was funny because like the crowd really couldn't, like the crowd reacted and then Roman reacted and they didn't show anything except for AJ Styles coming out. And then like you see the other angle where it's like, I am phenomenal. And it's like, oh,
they didn't. Right. And he's had such a great WWE run. So I I'm just a fan of wrestling. And I think that back in the day, I remember when magazines were huge for wrestling, like the official worked magazines for the WWE. And then Pro Wrestling Illustrated is pretty much worked when you think about it. It's not like a dirt sheet. It's not, well, this is happening. It's more surface level wrestling news, which I appreciate. I actually like that a little bit more than gossip news in a sense. And so I remember when that was big and I got introduced to PWI, the 500 list, every single name in that book I looked up and watched a match of one year because my grandpa got me the PWI 500 book at a Casey's. Which, shout out, you know what a Casey's is?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Casey's.
Do they have Casey's up north?
No, hell no, man. I think that's just kind of like the regional Midwest. Yeah, because even like when I was in Orange City, Iowa, like I remember like passing through and just seeing a couple Casey's like over in that area. But as far as like Western Nebraska, it's not a thing. Like I think once you pass like Omaha and Lincoln, like I don't think Casey's is like out that way.
That's crazy because they're now coming down into Knoxville, Tennessee. When they had the first Casey's there, I stood outside, took an Uber down there, and went in to get breakfast pizza because I missed it that bad. That's how much of an Iowa hick I am. But yeah, I got that PWI 500 list, and I went through every single name and watched a match, and it was amazing. It opened me to so many different styles. I didn't like all of them. Well, to be honest, I thought some of the matches sucked. Some of the guys weren't my favorite, but I was like, this is awesome. downloaded into my mind 500 matches.
Yeah.
And then with another example, my small town lost cable when I was a kid. We no longer had the access to cable. I don't know how that happens, but it did. And so we had antenna rabbit ears, but my mom bought me 500 VHS tapes of different wrestling from the 80s to the mid 90s and then the late 90s WCW. So that's the wrestling I really think shaped my territory mindset,
Mm.
because when I got introduced to Dusty versus Flair from 85 Starcade and Tully versus Magnum from 85 Starcade, I knew that that was the wrestling. That's my team. That's my team of wrestling.
Yeah.
And Barry Windham, and then guys like Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader. Those are my favorite wrestlers of all time. And then I got to see old Japanese tapes that were bootleg, that were stuff like Kabashi versus Masawa.
Mm.
Stuff that, again, formed my mindset on wrestling, that wrestling is a sport. You need to like hit hard, take this seriously. And Steamboat versus Macho Man. I had watched that match so many times that by the time I got to wrestling school and we studied it week 1 on tape day, I had already known it, and I was in my mind reciting the spots off. And Flair versus Steamboat, and I'm going to go on all night about 90 or 80s WCW, but Mid South, I fell in love with that when I got the network. The stuff with Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express, I think, is the greatest tag team program ever. I think that's, if people haven't seen that, dedicate to that 20-minute match that they had with Ricky and Robert versus Bobby and Dennis, not Bobby and Stan. And that match will teach you how to have a tag team match that can get over in any high school in America.
It's crazy
Any,
because that's okay. So I know Ricky, and like seeing him work, like it is such a treat to watch like his mind
Mhm.
at work. We were I think we were at PWX in like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right? And my trainer knows Ricky. Like they're really tight. They know each other. They talk like on text all the
Who
time.
was your trainer?
His name's Sicken. He's out of Baltimore, Maryland.
What's the
But
name of the school? I might have heard it. I've heard they're good
It's
schools in
Riot
Baltimore.
City. Well, his tag team's called Riot City. But then like we call it the Riot City compound is how we refer
Gotcha.
to the school. But yeah, so he was working with Ricky, and like he said, and I could hear him too, but like under his breath, he was like, "Hey, yo, these kids are at the wrong corner. Tell them to move fucking corners, or I'm gonna move them myself." And so like Sicken was like, "Hey, we don't want your corner. We want that corner." And the reason why was because that was the face's corner. It was towards hard
Right.
cam. It made sense.
You
And
could
it was
see
just,
the peril on the corner man's face as he's running up
yeah.
and down the apron, tag me, and then when they cut him off and stuff.
And we
That's
did. So it's funny because like we and I say we, me and my friends, when we tagged up, we did the same thing. So we were the heels, right? We knew where the faces were supposed to be. And so we were in like EWA in northern Baltimore, and these 3 young kids, man. They had been collectively in the business together. Actually, to be fair, 2 of them were in the business probably like under 3 years and under 2 years, and the other one was like had been at least 11 to 12 years, right? And so we bullied them out of their
right.
corner purposely because we're like, yo, we're the bad guys here. Like, they don't want to see our face, they want to see your faces. So we bullied them and we made the ref push them into the other corner. And it was so funny, but it's one of those things that like you learn that. I didn't know that until I heard Ricky
Right.
say it. Once I heard Ricky say it, I was like, that makes perfect sense. It's like, why would I not
Think
do that?
about this too. This is something you may not have picked up on at the moment, but you probably got a little bit of heat for bullying them out of their corner. If you did it over the top enough, the fans are gonna be like, "Why are they making them move? Why are they being such assholes insisting on the corner?" And then an indie shows that can be huge because that can turn 30 people's mindset into the crowd, and 30 people's a lot on an indie show when you have a crowd of 300.
Yeah.
That can really boost the moments, and that can make your match even better.
Oh yeah, and we just talked so much. Oh my god, it was so like I think I have the match. I might have to send it to you so you can see it's just
I
bullying
will
these
watch it.
kids out. These kids just got bullied out. It was so funny.
I would love
Hey,
to see that. And
let's
then
let
go ahead.
me wait. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say what you say.
I would just love to see it, just to see how the fans react. If my theory there is correct, that might have swayed a little bit of people. I don't know. I'm just curious.
So how long have you been in the business? Because you said you turned 18. I'm figuring you probably been in a couple years at least, 18
I
months.
have been in just under a year. I will
Okay.
have a year in December.
Nice. Well, okay, so you probably don't have one of these, or you might. I don't know. Just tell me. What's the worst bump you've taken so far?
I have a couple. I have a Mick Foley mindset to things sometimes, where it's like, well, I mean, there's like a 30% chance this is really going to hurt me, but there's also a 70% chance I'm about to be remembered by 300 people, and they're going to talk to their grandma about me. And I am such an attention whore, I had to. So my dumbest bump probably ever was a wrestling school bump. We were doing sidewalk slams last day of wrestling school as a treat because I asked to.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a kid, and I'm 330 pounds. That's a shoot, big. So if you ain't ready for the weight, don't, get and like, don't tell me you're going to slam me if you can't slam me.
Right.
And I was one of my buddies from wrestling school. He goes to sidewalk slamming. He was kind of hesitant. He's like, oh, I don't want to do it. And Doc said, no, go ahead, man. You'll be fine. And I went in for the sidewalk slam, and I did a little bit too much of a backflip. I tried to do a backflip, and if someone had the video, thank goodness it blacked out the video before this. Somehow we lost connection or something, and it's not on camera, so no one can hold this against me. But I landed straight on my head. Oh, it was awful. There was a crash pad there, but it didn't really help much when my knee hit my eye socket. And I get out, and Vaughn, who's my roommate, who is always quick with a comment because I'm a snorer, he goes, yo, Aiden, that's the most athletic thing I've ever seen you do. I'm like, damn, Vaughn. I'm not paralyzed.
Like, yeah, fuck you, bro.
Right, pretty much. And Doc's like, well, that's enough wrestling for tonight. And we sat on the apron for the rest of the night, and I was responsible for losing 30 minutes of JPWA time for 9 other people because I did a flip. And then my other dumb one, my friend Chris, who was another one of my roommates, who is one of the best talents in the entire South in the junior heavyweight class, in my opinion, and he just hasn't been seen yet. He's 23, and the dude is amazing. Incredibly athletic. And he has the hardest chop in the history of the world. That man has Walter hands, and he's 180 pounds.
Nice.
Oh, it's amazing. And so he's a ninja. His gimmick is he's Kid Yasuke. He's anime. Yasuke is a black samurai, and he's a black dude with dreads, and it's just a really cool gimmick. It's very, inspired. Like I love his gimmick. And I'm a big country hick. And so, I'm a mark for all Japan. So it's like, let's hit each other. And so I told him, light me up, man. And so we were in practice, and he gives me a chop right to the throat, which isn't a bump. But so I know his chop is lethal. And so we were in our 6-man tag for graduation for JPWA at Southern Pride Championship Wrestling, which still to this day is my favorite wrestling memory. We're in our match, and we're having a great match. The crowd is on fire. We got the pop of the night in our first match for 3 people in it, in front of people. Like it felt like I have goosebumps till this day. I cried on the mat, and we were the heels, and I'm in overalls, which is incredibly hot to wrestle in overalls when the heat furnace is on in the middle of December in Tennessee. 300 people packed into a barn. It was amazing. And I'm in overalls and whatever, and every spot goes nearly perfect, and even the ones that don't, the fans react even louder because of the screw up. It wasn't like we were botching stuff up. It just looked like chaos.
Yeah,
I
got you.
And we're outside of the ring, and the finish of the match, we're doing a hot finish. It's a 6-man tag. The baby faces then made this hot tag. So we did a suplex counter, and the guy suplexed the other guy, and the baby face made the tag. They exploded. And here comes the comeback baby face, and he gives me a punch, and I take a bump off the apron, whatever. Here comes Chris. He axe handle smashes me off the apron because we're doing chaotic. And then the female manager of them jumps on my back, and I'm trying to get her off. And I said, hold the straps of the overall so that he didn't hit his hand on any of the
the
metal bits of the. And he gives me this chop. And when I tell you it sounded like a gunshot went off in there, they stopped reacting for a second. And ooh. because I had talked my shit and got some heat, and I took a full-fledged concrete bump off of that chop,
Mm.
and it was amazing, and the fans reacted, and it was a great moment. But that hurt so bad, I nearly threw up. But it was awesome, and I have no regrets on that bump. Like, that was one that was worth it. That one right there, because I was right in front of a guy who I'd maybe harassed a little too much. They said get heat. Doc said seriously, try to get heat because we need that to cover up if you guys, kind of screw up.
Yeah.
First match. There's a fella who comes to every show there in La Follette who has one arm, Larry. And he's a bit over the top alcoholic-y sometimes. And he gets a little drunk and he wants to fight the wrestlers. Like, he tried to fight a buddy of mine, Coach Spank, who's one of the best managers in the South in Knoxville. And like he said, if you screw up the match, I'm gonna kill you. And he's out in the parking lot trying to fight Spank the show before. So I knew if you get heat on Larry, you're in for some. He thinks the business is still real. When they had the heel faction win the rights to the company to run it for a month, he wouldn't go. Nice. I'm not gonna give him my money.
I love it.
It's perfect. It's what every fan we wish was.
Just what every, because of full transparency, like that's what every fan should be like. Like yeah. Like you understand, like the business is like it is what it is, right? It's predetermined, right? But like you suspend your mind just for a bit, right? And you just I always think about it, like with movies and stuff like that too. I always just forget that it's not real.
Right.
And just enjoy what I'm watching. And then sometimes I like full transparency, right? And I think this is the first time I've ever told this story on here, right? So we went and watched Infinity War, and I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to like cut your story, but I just want to relate to this. But we went and watched Infinity War, right? And I went with a bunch of friends, and we went to the movie theaters, and we were all celebrating, and then the movie ends, and for 20 minutes, I sat in a parking lot like, yo, spoilers for those who haven't seen it yet. It's not like
it's been like 8 years. If they're that far behind, they're Amish.
It's fine. But yeah, I looked and was like, yo, I have always wanted a movie where the bad guy wins. I was like, and Thanos won. I was like, what did I do? And I sat there like concerned because like I just watched all my favorite superheroes go away.
Right.
It was like, shit.
That's a great example of how to tell a story. Not every good guy wins, and it was amazing. I love Infinity War, and I bet you enjoyed that so much more than you would have if you were just chilling, thinking, oh yay, I'm watching a movie. Like, if I can't invest my mind in a movie, I just turn it off.
Right.
Like, I want to think, what would I do in this situation?
It's not like I looked back and was like, oh, you know what? They're going to win in the second one anyway. I didn't care. In that moment, I was gone. I was like, oh no.
3 years to wait for the next one. So you're like, for a while, Thanos beat everyone's ass.
Yeah, I was like, yo, everybody's dead.
Right. Don't got to look out for any rumors from movies. But that is a great relation to kind of Larry, because he doesn't care. He's in the moment. You call him stupid, he's probably going to try to stab you just because no one's going to call him stupid in front of his mom, as he says.
I like that.
And I walked out there and I kind of got ribbed. I did get ribbed. I was told by a guy named Castle Jack, who's a local worker there and also JPWA guy. He goes, if you really heat up Larry, the whole crowd gets behind him. Go heat up Larry. I go out there. Keep in mind, Larry has one arm, and I'd like to apologize to the disabled community, but I smacked my shoulder and I said, clap for me, Larry. And he said he was going to shave bacon off my back and pulled out a knife. And so I had heated up Larry. And then I get in the ring and I slam a guy with one arm and I go, that was for you, Larry. And Larry got hotter. And he stood up for the rest of the match and was ready to fight. That little barricade and I was we were best friends. And he's standing there. And I'm right in front of Larry when Chris gives me this chop, and I look at him and I take this big bump, ass over tea kettle on the concrete. And when I say that grown man got over me and said, that's what you fucking get.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, and the teenagers around him were like, yeah. And they're like, seriously behind, like next to Larry. I'm like, oh, Castle Jack was right. Yeah. But my favorite part of that story is after the match, we're circling around, baby faces are in the ring celebrating, whatever. And I look at Larry, I go, Jesus Christ, Larry, your mom's fat or your wife's fat. And he goes, that's my mom. And I go, Larry, it's Tennessee, same thing. And I go to the back, and Larry looks for me in the parking lot that night. And so I like to say I got some old school Roddy Piper heat on a guy and his
I like
mom.
that.
And
I
so I feel like fans would be so much happier if they would do that. Or I like when kids get in the wrestlers' faces. Like I like that.
yeah.
You see parents sometimes in like polite crowds, like, no, honey, no, it's just a show.
It's just a show. Don't listen to him.
Is good. Actually, he's just playing a character so the good guy can win. It's like, no, you should be letting your kids be ravenous like for
Yeah,
4
let him
hours
get into it. Like I
once a
love
year.
as a face. So like I can work baby. I work baby face and heel. And so like when I work baby face, I love getting kids around me and like getting invested in me,
Yeah,
right?
they're
Like
what we're here for.
I had a girl like I was a baby face. I was getting my butt kicked. I like reached out to tag because like I love doing the spot where like I'm getting choked on a rope and I'll find like a random kid and I'll reach out and be like, yo, tag me in, like get him, right? And so like the little girl was just freaked out,
Right.
right? And she was like, no. And so like after the match at intermission, like she came to me and she gave me this big hug and she was in full tears, right? And like the dad was like, I have never seen her just randomly hug somebody ever. She's very introverted. This girl was like crying. And like first, like I'm a dad, right? So like I instantly go from out of character into dad mode. Like, yo, you okay? What's going on? Like,
Right.
is mom dead? Like, where's your parents? Right? Like, I asked all these questions, and the
Right.
dad said something to me, and I was like, oh. And then I clicked back in the character. I was like, oh well, we're a team together. We
Well,
got it
and
done.
also you're a baby face, so of
Yeah.
course your best reaction. But even as a heel, of course your reaction, the kid runs up and hugs you. You're like, what's the problem? Is there something
happened?
bothering you or something? Right? That would probably be a little sketchy at first, but I see where you're coming from on that one.
Yeah. So like but the girl literally, this is the best part of the story, right? The girl literally looks at me and she goes, I wanted to help you, but I thought he was gonna beat me up too. And I was like, oh, I got it.
Kids are great. They're my favorite part of shows. I actually had the pleasure of wrestling in Owine, Iowa. They're my favorite crowd. Them in La Tennessee. And that crowd was like 250 strong in a high school gym or a Catholic school gym.
Mm-hmm.
And the crowd was like 30% kids and probably 20% special needs folks and folks from the local Catholic home they have up there. And it was the best crowd. I did the hope spot, the arm goes down 3 times spot and a bear hug. And when I lifted my arm up like this and I shook out my hair because I have long hair, the fans went crazy and I felt like Hogan in the Toronto Sky Dome. Like seriously. And so I love crowds like that. Kids are the best part of the crowd.
Hell yeah.
And this is going to sound kind of awful too. They're the easiest to heat up. You don't have to say anything ridiculous. You just got to growl at them and they're scared or they're mad or whatever. And I love that with kids because it's the easiest crowd to work to. And oftentimes you'll see parents play along. It's like Santa Claus is real for a second.
Yeah. By the way, Santa Claus is real. Just for you kids out there.
Right. Right. Santa Claus is real. We all know Santa Claus is real.
You know what's funny though is that like,
but always tell your parents if someone's in your house.
Yes, if strangers are in there, if it's not Christmas and there's strangers in your house, it's
even if it is Christmas.
Even if it's Christmas, if he's not wearing a red jolly suit, all right, you call the police.
Just inform.
The 3 Count Podcast really would want you to call the police. Don't just tell your parents like, I think I saw Santa. Like, yo, it's July. But he was wearing a red suit. Like, no.
Right. And especially those listeners in Florida.
We got robbed. No, but so I had a kid, right? Like I was working as a heel and like I knew that he was in the crowd. Like I knew him, right?
Right.
And he was a student of my best friend's dojo, right? So I knew he was in a crowd. So I looked for him and like this kid is like yelling at me and yelling at me and yelling at me. And finally I just answered back. I was like, yo, what do you want? And he's like, yo, I'm going to beat your butt. I was like, bro, you cannot hurt me with your pillow punches. Chill out and sit down next to your dad before I let you know that you are really just adopted. I was like, oh. And then like, he turned his dad just like, They just started laughing, bro. It was just
Calm
one of those
down,
things.
man.
Oh yeah,
You
like
murked poor guy.
yeah, and there was like I had a wife, right, who was yelling at me and constantly yelling at me. And
Uh-huh.
finally I just had it and I was like, "Hey, you know what? Your husband's sitting right next to you cheating on you on his phone right now. He's probably on Tinder." And she looks and he was on his phone, but he wasn't he was like in the middle of something. And I was like, "Yeah, yeah,
Imagine,
look at him now, huh? I'm not the bad guy, so I'm not looking so bad, am I?"
right? Imagine if he was actually cheating though. He's like, oh fuck this dude. How the hell
This
does he
dude
know
called
that?
me out.
And why are you talking shit?
Why?
Like that.
Why do you gotta put that heat on me, brother? Okay, that was your heat, and then you just threw it on me for no reason.
That right there is like. Have you ever heard the rumored story about Sting and Lex Luger? The reason why they weren't friends for a while.
Yeah.
Sting, became a Christian and became born again, which is amazing, and I'm happy for him that he's in a great place now. But he felt so guilty. He felt guilty for Lex cheating on his girlfriend, and he told her, confessed for him. That's the equivalent of what you did to that man if he was
That poor
cheating.
guy.
You,
Yeah, I did sting him. Like,
you did. You did.
yo, so listen, I want to jump into like one of my favorite segments of the Three Count Podcast, right? It's called the Three Count Podcast, 10 Count Questions. And this is how it works, Mr. Aiden. I'm going to
Let's do
fire
it.
off 10 questions at you rapid fast. And whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to put on the imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing. And in the words of my favorite commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
SmackDown.
Favorite cartoon?
Batman the Animated Series.
Let's go. We're going to talk more about that after.
We are.
But you guys can't see it. PlayStation or Xbox?
Was always traditionally PlayStation, but recently Xbox.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Dark Knight.
X-Men or the Justice League?
X-Men.
Favorite actor?
Wow, that's a tough one. Christian Bale, probably.
Okay. I was figuring, when she said The Dark Knight, I was like, this is probably
Well,
what it's going to go.
I have a couple on that one, but we can expound on that later.
Okay. Apple or Android?
Apple.
All right. Favorite podcast?
Joe Rogan Experience.
Let's go, right?
I love
I've
it.
evolved that format.
I have a phrase about that. I always say, good food for your body's great. Good food for your mind is amazing. And I feel like Joe Rogan is good food for a person's mind if they really will.
A lot of people have like a lot of different opinions about Joe Rogan, and I'm like, you know what? There's probably an episode out there that you're gonna enjoy, and you just don't want to watch it. So it's fine.
Right. And if you just believe the hype on people, you're doing yourself a disservice. I remember back when I was a kid, I was always told, you watch something, you make your own opinion. You don't just follow a crowd, because that's
Right.
how you fall off a cliff.
I like that. Hey, so nominate one person that you want to see on this podcast.
Dr. Tom Pritchard.
100%. God, I would love to have Doc on here.
Actually, I'm going to nominate another too. My good friend Mike Mondo. You want the best young trainer in the entire wrestling business and the best mind in the entire wrestling business that doesn't get enough love and credit, Mike Mondo. I do a seminar with him about once every 2 months, and we talk for 4 hours sometimes about old school wrestling. And check out his Twitter. If you ain't following Mike Mondo, Mikey and the Spirit Squad, if you don't know who that is. He worked with Ric Flair, John Cena, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, all those dudes. But also he was trained by guys like Rip Rogers, Dr. Tom, Jim Cornette, all those dudes. He's a great mind. Seriously, you would love to have him on, I promise.
100% I would. All right, last question for you. And my favorite question, ask every single person who comes on the show. Favorite curse word?
I'm bad. I'm a George Carlin fan. But my two are motherfucker and cocksucker.
Yeah, those are just great words.
They are, and I don't mean it as anything, but sometimes I'm a sales associate for auto parts in my day job. And sometimes I'll be at work and someone will say something stupid and I'll start going on a rant feeling like Jim Cornette. And I'm like, oh, this is going to get me in HR's office again.
Yo, that's all right. I'll tell you about this conversation I had with my boss today about a certain person, and
Oh,
you're gonna
no.
you'll laugh about it. But
Oh,
yo,
no.
those are all my questions for you, and just the last thing I need from you is to let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
So yeah, you can find me on I my best social media page is probably my Instagram, which is just Perrin Aiden, PerrinAiden. And you can find my Facebook page. Feel free to go ahead and give me a follow, Aiden Perrin. We can be friends. And you can reach me. I have a link tree on all my pages. You can see me on Twitter. I'm on all social media. I post my promos on my YouTube, and I'm doing quite a run of podcasts. And you can see me on platforms like 3Count.
Right? Hey, so he just gave you all of his handles. He told you where you can find him. So like every great part of a wrestling match,
Shameless plug.
like every great part of a wrestling match, we gotta take this home because this is the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And by now, you guys understand I am your Sherpa, and like every girl Sherpa, it's never about me; it's about who's entering. So who's entering? You see the man right there, Aiden Perrin himself. So if you guys want to tune into the next episode and be there, or you're legitimately just like following us on all of our social media platforms, you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you're following us on Spotify, you're even listening to us on Amazon Music because we're there. And now letting you guys know we're also on iHeartRadio, that whole cool station that everybody likes to talk about. So you guys can check us out, or you can even watch us here on the Big Plus Network because these are amazing things that we have going on. And you're doing all that stuff. You're telling your parents about us, you're leaving those comments, you're leaving those shares, you're even telling your enemies about us and your dog or your cat or whatever animal you have, pet, fish, I don't really care. Right?
Just don't tell your parent because he'll tell someone else.
Yeah. And then you're doing that stuff, letting everybody know everything, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for that outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Kawaii. What's going on? It is Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And what we need from you guys is to kind of show some support, right? We want you guys to go to our YouTube channel at the 3Count Podcast, go on to our Twitch channel, 3Count Pod, or even our Facebook page, 3Count Podcast, and just give us a like, follow, subscribe, even give us a comment, right? Do all that cool stuff. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your enemies, right? Or you can even come talk to us and just chat us up, right? Find us on Twitter at 3Count_pod. Find us on IG and on TikTok at 3Count Pod. Go ahead and leave us those comments. We want to hear from all of you guys. We're going to keep putting on videos and stuff like that. We want to keep making this content better, so we want your guys' support. Also, if you guys want to, go support us at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3Count Podcast, or even find us on foryourwear.com. Give us the support. Show us your guys' love because we want to give it right back to y'all. So, in the meantime, between time, love y'all.